undistributing or unfoiling. It's putting your polynomial back into factored form, you know, with the parentheses, what it looked like before you multiplied and got rid of parentheses. And by having 4 terms, I can now factor this by a method called grouping. I put them in pairs of 2, and I factor out a greatest common factor from both of them. So when I start with the 14h squared plus 6h, I'm like, okay, what do just these two have in common? Well, I can factor out a 2 and also an h from both of those. And when I do, I'm left with 7h plus 3. Now I go back to these two, and I'm like, well, what can I factor from those two? Well, since they're both negative, I'm going to have to factor out a negative, and 21 and 9 are both divisible by 3. So when I take negative 21h and divide out a negative 3, I'll be left with a positive 7h. And then when I take this negative 9 minus 9 and divide it by a negative 3, I'll be left with a positive 3. Now, what I want you to notice is the sets of parentheses are identical. I have a 2h times a 7h plus 3 minus a 3 times a 7h plus 3. I literally have this stuff here minus that stuff there, and both sets of stuff have a, I'm going to pull it way out here, have a 7h plus 3 in common. So I'm literally factoring out the 7h plus 3 from both sets of messes. And then I'm going to be left with, if I pull out the 2h plus 3 here, I'll just be left with the 2h and then the minus sign. And then when I pull the 2h plus 3 from this back mess, I'm just left with the 3. So my answer that I'll